Hi there, and welcome to the first Edenia video of 2023. Now, to give a bit of context, I am about to build myself a new PC, mainly for gaming obviously, but also for things like video editing and being able to render and churn out videos for this channel a lot quicker and a lot better quality. And that got me thinking. You see, obviously I'm a huge advocate of transitioning into a more sustainable, more freer world, and a vehicle for that, which I often advocate for, is the general decoupling of individuals and communities from the current proprietary market system that's currently holding us all hostage. Now, one of the ways in which we can decouple ourselves from the market system is through switching to open source software. Now, in essence, open source software is a type of software that is free for people to access, and the source code also is free for people to access, manipulate, and create a copy of their own. Now, there are many types of open source software out there for different applications, but there's a big one that I think a lot of people have heard of but are a bit scared to use. You see, when building my new PC, I can either fork out for a Windows license, or I can choose another option, Linux. Linux is a type of operating system, or rather a set of operating systems that are free and open source, and they've been around since the 90s. Some common types of Linux operating systems, some common names include Ubuntu, Arch, Mint, Manjaro, and there's tons of others, more than I can name here. And the reason for switching to a Linux operating system obviously is because A, it's free, and B, there's lots of open source packages that are accessible on Linux that aren't typically accessible on other operating systems. And in general, you're a lot more freer to create and manipulate existing source code, and then create a version of your own and publish that to the wide world. Now, a drawback of Linux in the past is that it has been quite user unfriendly. Linux is seen as something, or at least has been seen as something that only nerds know about or know how to use, or at least only people in a professional setting that require a specific type of bespoke application that is only available on a Linux device. However, you can do so much with Linux these days, to things that general users would be involved in, like browsing, word processing, gaming. Even today, the reach and the compatibility and the support of gaming on Linux has expanded immensely in recent years. And strides have even been made to make Linux operating systems more user-friendly, especially when it comes to desktop environments. Behind me I have an old laptop from 10 years ago that's running a version of Linux known as Debian 11, and it's using a desktop environment known as KDE, or Cool Desktop Environment. At least that was the original. I hear you ask, what are these desktop environments? Well, you see, in Linux it's very customizable. You can customize almost any aspect of the operating system, and one of those aspects is the desktop environment. You can customize it for more user friendliness, or you can customize it to a specific theme. People have gotten very creative. You can look up many examples online. But with stuff like KDE, the focus is on really that user friendliness. And I think that in the future or in the present, that's, you know, it's drawing more people in, because that sort of reputation of Linux being just a, you know, a power user operating system is dying essentially, and with more devices adopting Linux-like operating systems like Android or Proton on Steam, or even embedded devices like Raspberry Pis use a version of Linux. Now, right now I have an application open known as FreeCAD. I've talked about it before on my channel, and it's what I use for designing my 3D prints, and it's running just fine on my Debian 11 build, and that's something that design there is something for a future project that I'm working on. But as you can see, Debian 11 is a fully functional operating system. I can have CAD software on there. If I just do something, that is Kdenlive, a fully open source video editor. And obviously there's things that we all know and love, like Audacity. Now obviously there are some quite valid drawbacks and concerns when it comes to open source software. It isn't quite as polished as its proprietary counterparts, and that's due to primarily the fact that open source software is developed by people in their spare time who aren't paid for their work. Nevertheless, a lot of open source software is nearly as good as the proprietary version, and as in it serves a lot of the same functions, just with a little bit less polish. Another concern is people just aren't used to it. With proprietary software, you'll find that it has a lot of like marketing behind it, and so people are more familiar with it, and proprietary software is more likely to be a little bit more user-friendly in its graphical interface and so on and so forth. However, if you do wish to delve into the realm of open source software, you'll find that a lot of it is backed up by wikis that contain a lot of useful information on how to use it. Now, the implications of open source software and the concept of open source in general is that it encourages the free flow of ideas from person to person on a peer-to-peer basis, and it encourages free innovation through collaboration between individuals and groups. Open source software and other solutions tend to also be more democratic in the way they are made, maintained, and improved upon. Open source also means that no one has a monopoly on knowledge, at least it's much harder to attain, and this means that no one is prevented from attaining the knowledge or the source code or what have you to improve or replicate a open source solution. Remember how in my first video of the year I talked about how people should be able to produce, replicate, improve upon, anything they see fit, and they should have access to the data, the information, the resources needed to do so, and this is perhaps one of the oldest examples of that. A couple of things I would like to see in the future with open source software and with the open source community in general is some general standardization, or at least more harmonization of solutions to make them work together a bit better. I also think with things like open source software, it can still be a little bit more, at least it could still be a little bit more user friendly, and that will lead to greater adoption as time passes. But all in all, I think if you use a computer or some other digital device regularly, I think that, give open source software a go. It's not something to be afraid of, and it's one of the easiest transitional steps away from the market that a person can take. yes, there's a learning curve, but once you're there and you've learned a lot of this stuff, you'll have a lot of skills under your belt that could be of use in the future. Anyway, I'm going to go work on that project you saw on the screen earlier. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more of these types of videos. And thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time. Take care. Bye for now.